It starts with the chirping of birds, the sun gently rising over a misty green field, and a young woman walking while engrossed in a book, a quintessential activity for Elizabeth Bennet, the heroine at the heart of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. But this Lizzie, as she's commonly referred to, is a little different. Her hair has flyaways, her dress is far from pristine, and the house and village she's walking through is muddy, messy, and already bursting with the frantic energy of a big family. From the beginning, Joe Wright's 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice takes us on a different vibe than any previous adaptation, and that's thanks in part to a critically acclaimed screenplay adaptation of the legendary novel. Joining me now to tell us more, Deborah Moggach. She is an English playwright, novelist, and screenwriter of the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, directed by Joe Wright and starring Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Bennet.
Thank you, Callie. It's lovely to be here.
As you know, this film adaptation is the one that everybody loves. I'll just say that right out. um, so, Working Title approached you to write the screenplay. This is what you do, as we've just noted. And what did you think about taking on this book, given, as you know, the intense fandom and intense love of this particular novel, Pride and Prejudice?
Well, you're right in that it's about the most beloved novel in our country, in the UK. And I'd also done The Diary of Anne Frank, which is the other most beloved book. So it was really quite daunting, because people feel very protective about a novel that they love, and also people knew it very well, so they come up to me and they say things like, "Oh, Debbie, you are going to leave in the bit where Mr. Bennet says to Mary, 'You've delighted us long enough, aren't you?'" Um, so it was sort of daunting, but it was a huge joy because it's the sort of perfect novel. It's very, very beautifully paced, and the big twists that come throw the story completely. And it was just fun. It's like cooking with very, very good ingredients.
So let me ask you, when did you first read Pride and Prejudice?
Well, I think I read it when I was a teenager, like most people. Um, And I didn't particularly like it, actually. I didn't quite see the point of it. Perhaps I understood it better later, because it is, of course, the template for all rom-coms since. It's the perfect rom-com in that it features a couple who think that they loathe each other and misunderstand each other, but actually they are madly in love.
So, one of the things that you were determined to do, which I believe you did so well, because I was talking to my producer about this, and I was personally shocked to see the mud. Every other adaptation I'd ever seen of this novel, where did mud come from? I really, at that moment, realized sort of the status of the family, of Elizabeth Bennet's family, and the context in which she lived. Just those scenes of sort of gritty realism, and I understand that director Joe Wright said he was all about trying to bring that grit to it as well.
Well, exactly. He'd only done documentaries before, and in a very sort of social realist style. So my working title didn't give me any pointers towards what I should do. It wasn't the revisionist version or the feminist or anything. But I did say to them, this should be the Muddy Hem version. And it's interesting, Callie, that you said that at the beginning in your introduction, because I wanted the girls to be young. I wanted them to have no makeup. I wanted them to wear the same dresses day after day. And I wanted to show the mud, because what we don't realize is that even though they're living in a beautiful Jacobean house, big mansion really, and they've got a bit of carriage and everything, they're actually on their uppers, and they're they're short of a bob or two, and the house doesn't belong to them. And so, outside that world is a world of mud and poverty and penury and dependence. And the future facing those girls, if they don't get married well, is of dependence. Like, Jane Austen, she was hauled around. she came from quite a middle class family, but she didn't have much of a life really.
Well, I wanna give a reminder of just the language, that you highlighted so well in the adaptation, the 2005 adaptation. So, I've read that you wanted to make sure that we had the essence of the messiness, the overlapping conversations. Talk to me about that.
What Joe Wright did, which is very unusual, is that he had a whole week of rehearsals, which is ridiculous for a long film, but actually they usually only have a few days. And those girls lived in the house. They went to a hotel for just to sleep, but they lived in the house, and they played sardines in it, and they brushed each other's hair, and they made themselves at home. And that made a great difference because it was very familiar to them. And it was unusual to do that, let actors do that. So that helped. And the fact that television and film always cleans up a house. Um, but so they made it extra, extra messy. And that will, when we get to Mr. Bingley's mansion, it will really show the difference because that will be high Regency world of order and formality, really. Um, so there's mess all over the place, and there's somebody playing the piano, and they've got a great lurcher dog trotting around all over the place, and there's washing hanging up outside. So you feel that house, even though it's so grand, is actually pretty shabby for the time. And also, the other thing, which was great, is that if a costume drama, if a historical drama is set in, say, the Regency period, it will be filled with Regency furniture and furnishings. And actually, if we look at all our houses, they're filled with all sorts of stuff from all sorts of different periods of our lives or other people's lives. And so the Bennet's house is quite a mess, and it's also full of sort of a rag bag of furniture. So it's a lived-in house, and that comes across very well, I think.
So one of the big decisions you made, despite everybody's pleas to put this in and put that in, is that you would focus on Lizzie. That Lizzie would be the driver. This would be her story. As people have read the novel, they know there are many characters. It's not that others don't show up in this adaptation, but you intentionally focused on her, and that allowed you to do what in terms of advancing this story in the way that you want it.
Well, I mean, that's such an interesting question. Um, I thought that it's Elizabeth's story, and we should see it entirely through her eyes, and that the humour would come out of sort of desperation, really, a desperate love, unacknowledged love and passion for this man, and the pain of causing her family distress by not marrying a ghastly curate and all that. Um, and we'd have a really good actress to play her, which I think Keira Knightley was. It was one of her earlier films, actually, um, because what with film acting, it's very different than obviously than stage acting and even TV acting because the story is written on the faces of the actors, and all sorts of emotions pass across their faces. And less is more, actually, which is, I mean, Michael Caine did a very interesting workshop with young actors, and Michael Caine's acting is very, very minimal. And of course, there are many great American actors who are masters of that. Um, So it was going to be written through her face, and also, or the story was going to be told through her face, and also the previous iterations, the previous dramatizations had been for television, and they were 6 episodes. The famous Wet Shirt one, Andrew Davis's one, was 6 episodes, and so it had to be enlarged. More stuff was written into the story, and mine had to be more boiled down because there hadn't been a film of Pride and Prejudice since instance, Greer Garson starred in one that was written by Aldous Huxley, of all people, way, way back in, I think, the 1940s or 50s. So it was left to be Elizabeth's story, and she's in every scene, and I cut out a whole lot of stuff.
This is your words. You combed through Jane Austen's words in shaping the dialogue.
Yes,
Tell
yes.
me about that.
Well, that was a great pleasure, really, because actually there's hardly anything in the script that she didn't actually write. But as you were saying, Callie, we pulled the comb through it. Um, I think I made up one sentence, which was Mr. Darcy, right at the end, saying to her uncle and aunt, saying to her uncle, in fact, if he'd like to avail himself of fishing in his lake at Pemberley, because the fish had been left at peace for too long, or something. It was a sort of quite an Austen-y sentence, I thought, but nearly all the other stuff came from her.
Now, one of the things that you did, and working with Joe Wright, the director, was really concentrate on making these characters the age they were in Jane's book. They were young people. So some of your dialogue reflects that age because in some of the earlier adaptations, the actors were much older than they were portrayed in the novel. What difference did that make by paying attention to those ages, having the actors be the ages they were in terms of your adapting the language for them to speak?
Well, do you know, Callie, I didn't think of that. Um, I've never been asked that question, and I'm trying to think whether I altered it. I mean, Lydia is an airhead, and so she's and they there's an awful lot of giggling going on, and there's a certain amount of ad libbing, as I said, going on amongst the girls because they all knew each other and they got on terribly well and everything. Um, I mean, as far as Jane Austen's words go, I had a long think about whether the famous opening sentence, the man, of fortune will be looking for a wife, and it didn't actually fit anybody. None of them. It didn't fit. It was too knowing for Elizabeth Bennet. It was Jane Austen's words, and so I actually got rid of them because we weren't going to have a voiceover at all. We wanted it to be more immediate than that. But I think that it was just interesting about the girls because I did find it quite difficult to write for so many people because there they all are in a room, and what are they all doing all the time? They're not drinking tea with their little finger crooked or anything. They can't be drinking tea all day, um, out of the lavatory, wouldn't they? Um, so what happened was that Joe Wright understood so well the undercurrents going on between them all, and the fact that Mary is a rather pompous, ponderous person who actually has the hots for the curate, because that there's two glances between her and him, um, and it was very interesting to see the way that he did that. Actually, I'm thinking of a scene which is the morning after the Netherfield ball, and the curate is Mr. Collins is staying with them. And what you see in that scene, this is talking about how a director can understand the subtext of what's going on, because film writing is all about subtext. The, it's when Mr. Collins is going to propose to Lizzie, and he comes downstairs, and the scene is shot that they're all having this breakfast. They all got hangovers. They're eating raw eggs and God knows what. Mary's plonking away on the piano and it's hurting their heads. They've all got headaches. Um, and Mr. Collins comes downstairs and he asks Mrs. Bennet if he can have a private word with Elizabeth. And Brenda Blethyn, playing Mrs. Bennet, ushers everybody out very fussily. And what happens then is that you see our heroine deserted by all the people who love her or she loves in her family, one by one. Particularly the last person to leave is the penultimate person is Jane, her beloved sister. And finally, it's her father. And the camera follows Donald Sutherland out of the room. In other words, the camera understands that he is the last person she's relied upon, and he's leaving her to her fate as well. And
Mhm.
it's really upsetting.
It really is because, as you've said, and as by that time in the film, we understand that they gotta get somebody to help them or else it's over. Mr. Collins will, in fact, own them later on. Now, I have to say, Mr. Collins is always horrible in every iteration. I thought he was particularly horrible in this. What hand did you, play in making him more obnoxious in this adaptation?
I don't think I made him more. I think he is that bad. There's a lovely moment in the book, and it's obviously in the script as well, where her friend Charlotte says when she's just newly married and showing her around her new house, she says that this is a room for his for my own particular use. You know, and all that because she obviously can't stand the sight of him, but she hasn't admitted that to herself because she's an old maid at her age, and she's mid-20s, because, of course, they lose their bloom and their marriageability very early,
The the older they
which
get. Mhm.
the older they get, and the whole it's very cruel, but anyway, it was a lovely
Well,
moment.
I wanna go back to a Charlotte moment with, Lizzie when she tells Lizzie she's going to accept, Collins's, wedding proposal, and she's pretty mad about, Lizzie's response to her, and I thought the language here was a little modern. You tell me
Yeah.
if this was deliberate on your part and because they were young people.
It's a moment of sort of naked truth. It was very interesting because I didn't write it like that at all. I actually wrote it. I upped the embarrassment because I wrote it that she and Charlotte are collecting eggs, one of the few things that women could do, young women could do then. And Lizzie sees Mr. Collins in the distance and she grabs Charlotte and she said, "Oh God, look, it's that ghastly Mr. Collins or whatever. Um, let's hide from him." And then Charlotte has to very, very awkwardly say, "Actually, we both we're we both were are here because we have something to tell you. I've got something to tell you." So it ups the embarrassment because in that scene, and it's interesting you noticed that, Callie. Um, in that scene, Charlotte just pops up out of the blue and tells her this unasked for information rather than it organically coming from the action. And I was slightly disappointed in that, but I rather liked that thing, which is a purely directorial thing that I didn't write at all, of her going round and round in the swing and the time passing because they had a big scene of the militia leaving town which cost an awful lot of money with, men in uniform all over the place and everything. Oh, big scene. But they wanted to concentrate just on Elizabeth Bennet. And so they cut that scene. I thought that it was an interesting way of doing it, but I was worried about the modernness of some of the words there. And there are one or two other bits. I mean, um, at one point, Charlotte, the sister of Mr. Bingley, says, "Oh, something like you must be joking, or you're." It's what John McEnroe used to say when he was playing tennis, and you cannot be serious because he was confessing that he loved Jane. Um, you cannot be serious, she says to him, and I winced at that. I didn't feel that that was quite appropriate for the time, but um, it slipped in. I don't know. Sometimes it's the actors are extemporizing something, or something slips out, or somebody likes it, or somebody else wrote it. Because
Mhm.
when I see the script, I don't recognize some of it at all because other people
Well,
came in.
yes, I wanted to just, underscore that other people came in and added bits and pieces, as you said, along the way, and that leads me to the big conversation about the end of this film.
Oh,
There were 2 endings, and what American audiences saw was quite different from what UK audiences saw at first. I know you said you all went around and around trying to find the perfect ending, and you have a particular distaste for the US ending. Please tell us about it.
I know. I mean, the thing is that somebody, the producers or whatever, rather patronizingly, I think, thought that Americans had a sweeter tooth than the British, and they would like a more romantic ending. But the interesting thing is, Callie, that ending, there's another ending. There's a different ending which is um which doesn't have that conversation in, which was written by somebody else anyway.
Oh my god.
It's Mr. Darcy walking. He takes quite a long time, a misty morning, dawn. He's walking across to Keira Knightley, to Elizabeth, and when he gets there, he tells her, I think he tells her he loves her or something, and they don't actually kiss, but he puts his nose against her nose. It's absolutely adorable, and he says that he loves her, and she just says, "Well then," which I loved. Um, and but I mean, I didn't have anything to do with that one either. I wrote an ending where, because I didn't want a double wedding because it looked too triumphalist and it's too cliched.
From
Um,
the 1995 version, there was a double wedding, but go ahead.
Exactly,
Mhm, mhm.
exactly, and that they often end with weddings, and I thought, let's not do that. Let's have an ending where the wedding is going on at Pemberley, and they sneak away, and they sit on a hillside together, um, and then they have some sort of conversation. I can't even remember what I wrote, but that didn't really work, and then the Americans shot then they shot the American version, but it was shot at night, and so you couldn't tell that they were actually married yet, because they seemed to be in their night clothes. It was all a right old muddle, actually. And I hope that people will just gloss over it and forget that they like the rest of the film, because it was a bit of a mess, actually.
Deborah, people love it. I'm sorry to tell you. People love it. As they love the whole film, and your work on it was so, critical. I thank you so much for joining me. This has been a great conversation and, one of my favorite adaptations, so thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been a great joy talking about it, I must say.